The first thing people noticed about Harun Malik was the bike. It wasn't just a motorcycle. It was a living, breathing extension of him. Matte black, scarred with miles, roaring like a promise and a warning at the same time. When Harun rode through the streets of Lahore, heads turned, some in admiration, some in fear. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his beard threaded with early silver, leather jacket hugging a body shaped by years of hard work and harder choices. But the thing people didn't notice, couldn't notice, was the way his right hand trembled slightly whenever he slowed at a red light, or how his eyes softened whenever a small voice called out, "Daddy!" That voice belonged to Zoya, his 8-year-old daughter who believed with complete certainty that her father could fix anything. Broken toys, broken promises, broken people. And on one terrible afternoon she would believe he could save a woman's life. The day began like any other. Harun picked Zoya up from school, her backpack bouncing against her shoulders as she ran toward him. She climbed onto the bike behind him, hugging his waist tight, her helmet decorated with cartoon stars. They were halfway home when Zoya tapped his side urgently. "Daddy, slow down!" Harun eased the bike near a deserted service road, lined with abandoned warehouses and rusted gates. "Look," she whispered, pointing. At first, Harun saw nothing unusual. Then he heard it, a muffled cry raw with fear. Behind a half-open metal gate, 3 men surrounded a woman. Her dupatta was torn, one shoe missing, her back pressed against the cold wall. One man laughed, another grabbed her wrist, the third stood watch, cigarette dangling from his lips. Time slowed. Harun's instinct screamed danger. He had seen this kind of thing before, years ago, in a life he had fought hard to leave behind. He stopped the bike. "Stay here," he told Zoya, his voice calm but iron-hard. Before she could respond, the woman screamed louder, a sound that sliced through him. "Daddy!" Zoya cried, panic flooding her voice. "Please save her!" Those 5 words hit him harder than any punch ever had. "Daddy, please save her!" Harun looked back at his daughter. Her eyes were wide, wet with tears, not afraid for herself, but for a stranger. In that moment, the man he had become collided violently with the man he used to be. He removed his helmet and placed it gently in Zoya's hands. "Close your eyes," he said softly. Then he walked toward the gate. The men noticed him too late. "What do you want, old man?" one sneered. Harun didn't answer. The first punch landed like thunder, snapping the man's head back. The second man lunged, pulling a knife. Harun twisted his wrist, heard bone crack, and sent the blade skidding across the concrete. The third man tried to run. Harun grabbed him by the collar and slammed him into the wall so hard the sound echoed down the empty road. In less than a minute, all 3 men were on the ground, groaning, bleeding, broken. Harun turned to the woman. She was shaking uncontrollably, arms wrapped around herself, eyes wide with disbelief. "You're safe," he said quietly, shrugging off his jacket and draping it over her shoulders. "It's over." She collapsed, sobbing, clutching the leather like it was the only solid thing left in the world. Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone must have heard. Harun walked back to Zoya, lifting her into his arms. "You didn't look," he said. She nodded, pressing her face into his chest. "But I heard..." Later, at the police station, Harun sat silently as statements were taken. The woman, her name was Ariba, kept glancing at him as if afraid he might disappear. She was 26, a newly hired office assistant. "Wrong place, wrong time. They would have..." Her voice broke. Harun shook his head. "They didn't..." That night, after dropping Zoya at home and tucking her into bed, Harun sat alone on the balcony, memories crawling out of dark corners. He had spent years running from violence, from fists, from blood, from a past soaked in regret. And yet, today, violence had been the thing that saved someone. The next morning, Ariba came to his door. She stood there awkwardly, hands clenched, eyes tired but determined. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. Harun shrugged. "You don't have to," but she insisted on bringing food. Then she insisted on checking in. Then she insisted on helping around the house when she learned Harun was raising Zoya alone. Slowly, cautiously, lives began to intertwine. Zoya adored her. "You're like a princess," she told Ariba one evening, braiding her hair. Ariba smiled sadly. "Princesses need saving too." No, Zoya said firmly. Princesses learn how to be strong. Weeks turned into months. Ariba started therapy. Nightmares came less often. She learned to walk that service road again, head held high. Haroon watched from a distance, pride and fear tangled in his chest. One night, she finally asked him, "Why did you help me?" Haroon was quiet for a long time. "Because my daughter asked me to," he said, "and because once, no one helped someone I loved." Ariba didn't push further. She didn't need to. The past came knocking one evening when one of the attackers, out on bail, tracked Haroon down. He cornered him outside a garage, rage burning in his eyes. "You think you're a hero?" The man spat. Haroon stood his ground. "No." The man raised a gun. Before he could fire, police swarmed the area. Ariba had recognized him earlier and made the call. That night, as Haroon sat on the floor of his living room, shaken, Zoya crawled into his lap. "You saved her," she said softly. "No," Haroon whispered, holding her tight. "You saved her." Years later, people would still talk about the biker who fought 3 men. But Ariba would remember something else entirely. A father who listened to his child. A little girl who believed kindness mattered more than fear. And the day a broken past was finally redeemed, not by fists, but by love. The weeks after that night did not bring peace the way Haroon had hoped they would. Instead, they brought silence, the kind that presses against the ears and makes old memories speak louder. Haroon went back to his routine, early mornings, long rides, fixing engines in a small garage owned by a friend who never asked questions. Zoya went to school, came home, did her homework at the dining table, humming to herself as if the world had never shown her its darkest face. But Haroon saw the changes. Zoya held his hand tighter when they crossed roads. She flinched at raised voices. Sometimes, when she thought he wasn't looking, she stared at him with a seriousness far too heavy for an 8-year-old. One night, as he tucked her in, she asked quietly, "Daddy, will those bad men come back?" Haroon sat on the edge of her bed, heart tightening. "No," he said firmly, "they won't." "How do you know?" "Because I've spent half my life fighting men like them," he almost said. Instead, he brushed her hair back. "Because I won't let them—" That answer seemed to satisfy her. She smiled, reached for his hand, and drifted to sleep. But Haroon stayed awake long after. Ariba kept her distance at first. She didn't want to intrude. She didn't want to feel like a burden. But trauma doesn't respect boundaries, and fear has a way of dragging people together. She began visiting the garage during her lunch breaks, standing awkwardly near the door, pretending to scroll through her phone while watching Haroon work. Oil-stained hands. Focused eyes. A quiet steadiness that made her feel safe in a way she hadn't felt since childhood. "You don't have to come here," he told her one afternoon. "I know," she replied, "but I like knowing you're real." He didn't understand at first. After what happened, she explained, voice low, "Sometimes it feels like I imagined everything. Like if I blink too long, the fear will come back and tell me it's still happening." Haroon nodded slowly. He understood that better than she knew. One evening, as they sat on the roof of his house, watching the city lights flicker, Ariba finally saw the cracks in him. His hand trembled as he lit a cigarette. "You don't have to hide it," she said gently. "Hide what?" "The way you're always ready," she continued, "like you're waiting for something bad to happen." Haroon exhaled smoke, eyes fixed on the dark sky. "I wasn't always like this," he said. She waited. "I used to be part of a biker crew," he went on. "Not the harmless kind. Fights, smuggling, violence. I was good at it. Too good." Ariba's breath caught. "Zoya's mother. She hated that life," he said, voice rough. "She believed I could change. I believed it too. What happened?" Ariba asked softly. "She was pregnant. I promised her I was done." "One last job," I said. His jaw clenched. There was a fight, guns, chaos. She was at home, wrong place, wrong time. Ariba covered her mouth. "She didn't make it," Haroon finished. "Zoya did." The silence that followed was heavy, sacred. "That's why," he said quietly, "when my daughter asked me to save you, I couldn't walk away. I already walked away once. I won't do it again." Ariba reached for his trembling hand, holding it firmly until it stilled. "You're not that man anymore," she said. "I still am," he replied. "Every day I choose not to be." Trouble returned sooner than expected. Rumors spread. The men Haroon had beaten were part of a larger group. Whispers floated through streets and garages. A warning was spray-painted on the wall near his home. Zoya saw it first. "Daddy," she whispered, fear cracking her voice. "What does that mean?" Harun felt the past breathing down his neck. "It means," he said calmly, scrubbing the paint off with shaking hands, "that some people don't like consequences." That night, he packed a bag. Ariba found him in the living room. "You're leaving," she said. "Yes." "For how long?" He didn't answer. "You can't keep running," she said, voice breaking. "Not from this, not from us. Us." The word hung between them. "I'm not running," Harun said. "I'm protecting my daughter." "And what about yourself?" Ariba asked. "What about the man who deserves peace too?" Before he could respond, a loud knock shook the door. Harun moved instantly, placing Zoya behind him. When he opened the door, 2 police officers stood outside. "We need you to come with us," one said. Ariba's heart dropped. "Why?" Harun asked calmly. "For your own safety," the officer replied, "and because the man who threatened you, he's been arrested." Along with the rest, relief hit Harun like a wave, his knees nearly buckled. Later that night, Zoya clung to Ariba as they watched Harun sleep on the couch, exhaustion finally winning. "He's a hero," Zoya whispered. Ariba smiled through tears. "He's more than that." As weeks passed, something new began to grow, slow, fragile, and terrifying. Hope. Harun laughed more. Ariba stopped looking over her shoulder. Zoya started drawing pictures of Guy. Pictures of 3 people holding hands, standing beside a motorcycle under a bright sun. One evening, Zoya looked at them both seriously. "When I grow up," she announced, "I want to be brave like Daddy, and kind like Ariba." Harun felt his chest ache. Maybe some days really do change lives forever, not because of the fight, but because of what comes after, when broken people choose to stay, to heal, and to believe they deserve something better. And none of them knew yet that the hardest test of all was still waiting. The trouble didn't come crashing back into their lives. It crept, quiet, patient, wearing the face of normalcy. Months passed, and for the first time in years, Harun began to believe he had outrun his past. The garage flourished. Word spread that he was honest, skilled, and didn't overcharge. Men trusted him with machines they loved more than themselves. Some even trusted him with stories about anger, about regret, about wanting to be better fathers than their own had been. Zoya thrived. She laughed louder now, slept deeper. Her teachers said she had become fearless in the classroom, raising her hand even when she wasn't sure of the answer. And Ariba learned how to live again. She started walking without clutching her phone. She stopped freezing when footsteps echoed behind her. She joined a self-defense class, not because she expected danger, but because she wanted to reclaim her body, her strength, her voice, and somewhere between shared dinners, quiet conversations, and Zoya's relentless matchmaking. "You should marry my daddy," she said one night, entirely serious. Ariba and Harun crossed a line neither had planned to approach. It happened on an ordinary evening. The power went out during a storm. Rain hammered the windows. Zoya slept curled between them on the couch, her small hand wrapped around Harun's finger. Ariba watched him in the dim light. The scar on his knuckle, the exhaustion in his eyes, the gentleness he reserved only for his child. "You know," she said softly, "I used to think being saved meant being carried away from danger." Harun glanced at her. "Now I think it means being taught how to stand again." Their eyes met. Nothing dramatic happened. No kiss, no confession, just understanding. And sometimes that's heavier than love itself. The past returned on a Tuesday. Harun was closing the garage when he noticed a familiar motorcycle parked across the street. Black, modified exhaust. The emblem scratched but unmistakable. His old crew. His heart sank. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Ariba said later that night. "Worse," Harun replied. "I've seen my reflection." The next day, one of them came to the garage. Same crooked smile. Same cold eyes. "Harun Malik," the man said. "Didn't think you'd last this long pretending to be normal." "I'm not pretending," Harun replied evenly. "I'm done." The man laughed. "No one's ever done. Not really. The threat wasn't spoken. It didn't need to be." That night, Harun sat alone, staring at his hands. These hands had broken men. built engines, held his daughter, shielded a woman from the worst night of her life. He finally understood something he had been avoiding. Violence had shaped him, but it did not have to define him. The call came just after midnight. Ariba, her voice was shaking. Haroon, they followed me. His blood ran cold. Where are you? Near the old service road. The same place. The universe had a cruel sense of symmetry. Haroon reached the spot in minutes, heart pounding, mind razor sharp. 2 men this time, not 3. Ariba stood frozen, fear etched into every line of her body, and beside her, Zoya. Haroon's world stopped. "Daddy!" Zoya cried when she saw him. "Tea!" He men laughed. "We just wanted to talk," one said. "Looks like you've got a nice little family now." Haroon stepped forward slowly, hands raised. "Let them go," he said. "This is between you and me." One of the men shoved Ariba. Zoya screamed. Something inside Haroon finally broke, but not into rage, into clarity. "No," he said quietly. "This ends now." Sirens sounded in the distance. The men hesitated. Ariba had called the police before freezing. Zoya had memorized the emergency number because her father taught her that courage meant preparation. The men ran. Police arrived. Statements were taken. Arrests followed. This time, Haroon didn't throw a single punch. Later, at home, Zoya sat on his lap, trembling. "I was scared," she admitted. "I know," Haroon said, holding her tightly. "Being brave doesn't mean not being scared." Ariba knelt in front of them, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I brought this danger back into your life." Haroon shook his head. "No, the danger was always there. We just faced it together." Zoya looked between them, eyes fierce. "You saved me this time," she said to Ariba. Ariba smiled through tears. "No, sweetheart. We saved each other." Months later, the threats stopped for good. Court dates passed. Sentences were handed down. The past, at last, loosened its grip. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Haroon stood beside his motorcycle. Zoya sat between him and Ariba, holding both their hands. "You know," Zoya said thoughtfully, "my daddy isn't scary." Ariba laughed softly. "He can be." Zoya shook her head. "He's strong. That's different." Haroon swallowed hard. That night, when Zoya was asleep, Haroon turned to Ariba. "I don't know how to love gently," he admitted. "I only know how to protect." Ariba stepped closer. "Then protect us." "Stay. That's enough." He pulled her into his arms, not as a fighter, not as a savior, but as a man who had finally learned that strength could be quiet. Years later, Zoya would tell people about the day her father fought 3 men. But what mattered more was what came after, the day he chose not to fight anymore. The day a little girl's plea turned a broken man into a whole one, and the day a woman learned that being saved wasn't about being rescued. It was about being believed and loved forever.